Life books. Books that have changed my life. Books that will change your life. Today, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite and most mind-expanding books. But first, please send your validation my way so that I can inhale it into my body. Do that by subscribing to the YouTube channel and hitting the notification bell subsequently after so that you can get brand new videos. All other platforms that happen to be watching this video, please share, like, and comment with your friends. As you can see by the disheveled bookshelf or lack thereof that I have over there, I am a huge fan of reading. A lot of people talk about the benefits of reading, and it definitely is something that is somewhat of a beaten dead horse, so to speak. Everyone tells you what to read. Everyone tells you that you should be reading. But I've noticed that sometimes the recommendations for the books that are given are okay. There's nothing wrong with reading self-help books. I've written self-help books. I've read all of the classic self-help books, but today my list is going to include some of those and then also some things that are really going to change the way that you look at the world, because that's what a good book is supposed to do. A good book, a life-changing book, is something that shifts your worldview. It's something that helps you see something or understand something in a way that you couldn't do that before. A good book is really revealing, and it is life-changing because it goes above and beyond some of the typical information that you see out there. Now, these are the books who, influence the way that I write, that influence the way that I think. So, my books are unique in that I draw from these various sources and try to give you that angle that helps you change your life. So without further ado, here are the books that changed my life. Number 1, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, this might be a book that you'd find on other people's lists, kind of a staple in the business self-help genre of books, but it is so impactful and life-changing that the first time I read it, it was almost like reality itself, or at least the way that I understood it, changed. So what is Rich Dad, Poor Dad about? Rich Dad, Poor Dad is about Robert Kiyosaki growing up with his biological father, who he quote-unquote called his poor dad because he was a wage-earning school teacher. And then he had a friend who had a father who was an entrepreneur, and that's who he dubbed his rich dad. And throughout the book, he apprentices essentially under his rich dad and learns all of these lessons about money that we just aren't taught in school. And that was what was so revolutionary about the book for me, is it taught me so many ways of thinking that you just don't hear from the school system. And one of the number one things they talk about in the book is building assets. You always want to build assets that generate cash flow. You want to build assets that generate cash flow, and then you want to reduce liabilities that take away your cash. So what do I mean by an asset? I've talked about this in many videos before. I've written books. So I have this book, my book, You 2.0. I wrote this book 2 years ago, and I still get paid quite well to this day in and day out, because I created an asset once that I can earn money on over and over and over again. So you can create an asset in the form of a product. If you own a business to where you have employees who are able to replicate some of the work and some of the things you teach them, and you are able to generate money without your consistent effort, then you have an asset. When you put money into an account that bears interest, you have an asset. So most people do not focus on building assets. You focus on building wages. Wages are tied to your time. No matter how hard you work, no matter how high your rate, your income is tied to your time. And that is not an equation that's going to lead to freedom. You even look at people like doctors and lawyers. Doctors and lawyers earn high salaries, but still, The amount of work they have to put in to earn those salaries is frankly too much, in my opinion. I know a lot of people who are not as smart as lawyers and doctors and who far exceed them in earnings because they know how to build assets. They know how to build things that pay them over time. But you are not taught this in school. You are not taught this in school because society wants you to think like a wage earner and stack up liabilities. So what are liabilities? A controversial item he puts in the liability bucket and not in the asset bucket is owning a home. Now, for a lot of people, owning a home is like a religion. People say homes are your best asset. In this book, he argues that it's not. He argues that it's actually a major liability. And when you look at it, yes, do you increase equity when you buy a home? Absolutely. But that liability, that money coming out of your pocket, is an opportunity cost that you could have used elsewhere, especially in a more liquid way. And you have that liability of the debt, so that if something goes south economically, if you lose your job, it doesn't matter how great of an investment your home was at one point when you were employed, when you can no longer afford your mortgage and now you are underwater and now you are liable for what you owe. And, families were destroyed in the 2008 crisis this way because people were over leveraged with debt and did not have assets that were generating cash flow for them. So when their sole source of income is removed, then they're in trouble. So I have several sources of income. I have my books. I have the website that I write for on Medium where I get paid for my writing there. And that site has an algorithm that promotes my work so that I am not investing direct time into all the money that I make. I do affiliate marketing where I promote products on my websites. People come to the website, they buy the product, I get paid. I do some things to help promote it, but that is an entity of its own that earns income as well. I am going to be, hopefully, in the future, monetizing the YouTube channel. And like I've talked about before with the idea of assets and leverage, is that you do the same amount of work, but on the back end, that work will start to pay more dividends. So I shoot the same length of videos, I put the same effort into the videos, but the videos I do down the road when I have more of a following are going to have more of an impact. They're going to spread. You want to be able to, your product or your business or you want to be able to touch multiple people at once. That's what creating an asset is. That's what entrepreneurs and investors do. And this is what 99% of people who solely focus on wages don't do. You're being tricked into sacking yourself into a bunch of debt, which can be used to finance things that are good for you. Don't get me wrong, but you are in a susceptible position if you take on too much debt and you don't generate cash flow. So this doesn't mean that you have to be an entrepreneur. You could invest in real estate. You could buy properties where people pay rent and you get cash. But you always want to have cash coming in more than the cash that is going out. And that is a revolutionary shift in my mind that I had never heard before. And it goes through a bunch of other things, how to think like an entrepreneur as opposed to being a wage earner, that are frankly profound. How to win friends and influence people. Another kind of staple in the self-development world. How to win friends and influence people is basically, it teaches you all the things that you learned in kindergarten, but that many adults fail to adhere to now. Smile, be polite, acknowledge other people. The main theme of the book is basically that everyone else looks at themselves as the center of the universe. You look at yourself as the center of the universe. So if you actually have the ability to kind of step outside of yourself, be empathetic, and actually pay more attention to others and focus on others, all of a sudden people are going to think you are just this popular, gregarious conversationalist when really you just listen and acknowledge people. If you can shut up for a little bit, smile, make eye contact with people, parrot back to them what they tell you, and genuinely listen with focus without the intent to reply immediately, people will love you. How to win friends and influence people is basically just a very basic, simple guide on just being diplomatic. And it's really helpful because most people lack the kind of social skills and social calibration that can help you maneuver through this life easily. One of the other rules in the book was don't argue. Don't correct people. Don't be a know-it-all. Because even if you succeed in pointing out the correct fact, you make other people feel bad about themselves by pointing out how they're incorrect. So you're just going to make them not like you. So people who are always talking about, think they know everything about every single debate and they want to debate you, nobody likes that person. Don't be that person. Be the person that reserves their opinions for the right formats, that knows how to interact with people in a single one-on-one setting in a group. Learn how to be empathetic. Learn how to be positive and upbeat. I've talked about this so many times. Just my presence around people, I just treat people nicely about my day, and I smile at them and I'm polite. And they are shocked by this. And they can feel the positive energy generating that frankly you don't feel from most people. So How to Win Friends and Influence People, another great kind of starter self-improvement book. I'm going to move up the chain to a little bit more complicated books and ideas that are really profound, but those two are really a great start. The Shortness of Life by Seneca. Now, this is another short book from Stoic philosopher Seneca, and I read this book as a refresher from time to time just to get off of my ass and make sure that I'm making the most out of my life. And he talks about the fact that we're fickle with our money. We won't just hand out our money to anyone. We will, try to conserve everything except for the thing that matters most, our time. We squander our time. There's a quote in the book and he says, we are immortal in all that we desire, and mortal in all that we fear, or vice versa. I forgot the exact quote, but what he's trying to say is when it comes to our goals, we act like we have unlimited time to live forever, but at the same time, we're scared of death. You don't have to be scared of death if you're living life well. You don't have to even think that life is short. He also talks about the fact that your life doesn't have to be short. Life can be long. And it's really a book that just focuses on the fact that you're going to die and you don't know when. So you should spend that time on your mission, on being present, on focusing on the philosophy of your life. Learning how to set boundaries and say no to things that are unimportant and to focus on what is important is really one of the most profound insights you could ever have if you actually implement it. What do people do? They push things off, push things off, push things off. And then eventually you wake up and you're too old to get done what you want to get done. You're too frail, you're too weak, you're too beaten down by society and your job and your errands and your bullshit. You waste all your time, and then by the time you realize it, it's too late. The sands of time are slipping away. Use your time wisely. So this book, it's kind of like smelling salts for me, because Seneca, he's very sharp with his tongue and he, holds no punches. He has a quote in there where he's like, you're so afraid to die, but what do you call this life you were living? How is the life you're living really any better than death? And I'm like, wow, okay, Seneca. Kind of coming at my neck, Seneca, but in a way, he's right. If you're going through the motions, just going to work every day doing some bullshit, not being engaged, how much better is it than actually not existing? How much is your life actually better than you not being here? What kind of would anybody even notice? Are you leaving an impact on the world? Would anybody even really notice the impact of whether or not you're here? I know that people would notice if I wasn't here. Now, I'm not saying I'm some big celebrity, but I've spent time building a tribe of people. So if I died, I think people would at least certainly notice. If I stopped creating content, I think there would be some people out there who would wonder what was going on, right? So that's what you want to have. You want to have an impact. You don't have to be worldwide. It could be within your community. You want to have that mission for your life. And focusing on death is one of the best ways to get there. Shortness of Life by Seneca. Antifragile and Fooled by Randomness. These are both by an author named Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Nassim Taleb is an options trader. Now, I don't know all the specifics of options trading, but it's like stock trading, things like that. And basically, he got famous talking about the ideas of risk. He made a lot of money in the financial crash because he wasn't able to predict when the crash was going to happen, but he predicted that the system itself was fragile. So what does he mean by fragile? A system is fragile when it's being propped up. And the way that he was describing it was that there was all these faulty mortgages and there was all of these problems with the system, but kind of the government and the Federal Reserve and all these different entities tried to smooth things out on the surface and make them look stable. So when you do that, instead of letting the stock market go up and down with little corrections, when you try to smooth that over, you expose the system to what is called a black swan. And a black swan is basically an unforeseen event that is like so catastrophic you don't see it coming. And that's what happened with the crash. And he didn't know when the crash was going to happen, but he looked at the way the system was set up and he's like, oh yeah, stockpiles of debt, like this isn't good. Something bad is going to happen. So he basically made a tiny bet with low odds that if it paid off permanently forever. So he made a couple trades that basically made him extremely wealthy. And it's really not so much about wealthiness or him being a stock trader. It's about what fragility means, what anti-fragility means. Fragility, look at the way a lot of people live. I just talked about that example earlier with people who are in debt. If you are in debt, everything is fine as long as no black swans occur, as long as you're not thrown for a major loop. But see, you can operate fragile for a very long time. You can be under a mortgage, over leveraged on your credit cards, over leveraged on your car note for a very long time without anything bad happening. In fact, you might go through your entire life that way without anything major, bad, or catastrophic happening. But when it does, we saw what happened in 2008. When it happens really, really hard, and it really, really, really hurts. So instead of being fragile, you want to become anti-fragile. And basically what anti-fragile means is that you set your life up in a way that variance and chance can help you. And then you know what your limit is to how much you can be hurt. So again, I'll tie this back to the example of writing. Writing is a very anti-fragile career because the downside is known. I know how much money I invest into my writing, into my books, into production, and honestly, it's not a ton. If I made no money off of it, it wouldn't kill me. So that's one of the lessons you always want to learn from Nassim. Don't put yourself in a position where you can go totally bust. And that's what people do when they get into a bunch of debt. They put themselves in a position where they can go totally bust. Me, if it doesn't work out with the investment I put into my writing, I just lose that investment. My life isn't over. But the upside is tremendous. The upside is tremendous. I get picked up by some press outlet. Someone mentions the book. It randomly spreads through word of mouth. Sometimes things are a matter of complete chance, which is where Fooled by Randomness comes in. Fooled by Randomness talks about the role that chance plays in our life. We like to think that we have control and agency over our lives, which we do to a degree. But we underestimate the role that luck and chance play in our life. So basically, he says the way that you live your life, you have all these different decisions and probabilities, and your life is basically just one set of possibilities among infinite sets of possibilities, many of which, the variables are random. So he says the way to become successful is to try to set up your life in a way that if you were to run 1,000 simulations of your life, you'd be successful in 900 of them, right? So what's an example of not that? Bill Gates. If you run Bill Gates' life through a simulation 1,000,000,000 times, he might not even become the founder of Microsoft and an Uber billionaire once. So he talks about randomness in the fact that there's something called survivorship bias, where you see certain people at the top who took a certain set of steps, but then there are a whole bunch of other people who took the exact same steps and failed. So that's why you shouldn't lionize all of these super successful people. That's why I always talk about, don't just copy the habits of successful people thinking you're going to become a millionaire, because you're not. A lot of people, there's different levels of merit, but there is survivorship bias inside of all of that. So that's something that you have to recognize. And so you want to set up your life in a way that, minimalizes the role that luck plays in your life, to still understand that it's still going to play a role anyways. Again, this is all about setting up your life in a way that benefits from variation. What do I mean? So I gave you the example of me being a writer that benefits from variation. Different people talking about the book, I don't know exactly who will, but if it pops, it can pop, and I know the downside. Setting up your investments to where you have some safe and stable investments, but then you take some chances on some stocks that are risky, or you diversify your portfolio, or you invest in crypto, different things like that. You just want to put yourself in environments that benefit from stress and that help you grow. And the way that kind of markets in general work is that markets and environments and even nature itself benefits from randomness and variation as a whole. It's kind of a system where every single piece works together, and you don't know the exact nature of how the system works because there are too many variables. But then you have good things that come out of the economy. Through randomness and evolution, we have nature. So there is an intelligence in randomness, and oftentimes the best answer is to just leave those types of organic systems alone. So he talks about not messing around too much with the economy, not trying to intervene in the markets, letting things going up and down, different things like that. And he goes deep into a lot of different topics in the book. Honestly, it's one of those books, or the set of books, actually it's called The Inserto. So look up The Inserto and you'll see all the books. It's the name for the series of his books. And I've read each of the books like 3 or 4 times, and then you learn something new each time. There's so many things I didn't talk about even in these books, like survivorship bias I've talked about, antifragility I talked about, robustness, meaning that you just want to make sure that you're at least not fragile. So that's things like having savings, that's things like getting out of debt, things like that. Fooled by Randomness has so many different ideas. Just really what it breaks down to is stop trying to grip the steering wheel of life to force exact outcomes to happen. All you have are probabilities. So on the one hand, sometimes things might not go your way through no fault of your own. So you just have to accept it and move on. And then also, when you're successful, you don't want to fall under the false belief that you have the magic touch, that you know everything. So really, the set of books are about, intellectual humility. And it actually helped temper my self-improvement writing to where oftentimes you don't hear me guarantee you're going to be successful anymore. I talk about things to increase your odds of success in life. When I write a blog post, I put elements of marketing in that I know are going to lend to a well-written post that has the potential to go viral. But that built-in anti-fragility to writing itself is what gives me the opportunity to go viral when chance comes into my life. So just read the books. The first books I recommend anytime somebody asks for a book recommendation, I just say Nassim Taleb. Nassim Taleb. Doesn't matter what industry you're in or what you think you know about the world or how you think it'll help. The books just go through a major mental shift. Life-changing book. Should have started with that, actually. Definitely the most life-changing set of books I've ever read. The War of Art. The War of Art is definitely a life-changing book, and this is just a book for if you really struggle with self-doubt. This is especially true for us who are like artists, creators, writers, YouTubers, podcasters. There's just some sort of imposter syndrome that comes with these type of professions, and it comes with basically anything that deviates outside of the normal path. Anything that requires delayed gratification, you're gonna feel self-doubt. And there's plenty of books about self-doubt written out there, but the way that Pressfield spins the word self-doubt is perfect, and it really actually helps the message hit home. And he talks about the idea of the resistance. So he doesn't just say, oh, you have self-doubt, get over it. No, he talks about waging war with the resistance, an evil, formless, shapeless, tasteless, odorless life force that is seeking to destroy your dreams from every single angle possible. The resistance. The resistance is impersonal. The resistance has no personal animus towards you, but at the same time, its sole purpose is to steal your purpose. The resistance manifests itself in the inner critic. The resistance manifests itself in your friends and family who just tell you to be practical. Just be practical, Johnny. Just be practical, Jane. Just go to college, sack up all that debt, and get the degree so you can make $60K a year and never be happy and be semi-suicidal driving to work every morning. Do that. That's the resistance talking. The resistance is basically all of the messages in society that try to get you to be weak, that try to get you off of your path, that try to rob you of your purpose. And the resistance takes form in the individual and the collective and comes at you from every angle. And it's very tough to deal with. Like when I talk to people, I'm like, dude, I get it. Just up and, oh, I want to become a writer. Psh, hard to do. Oh, I want to become a YouTuber. Hard to do. I want to become a public speaker. Hard to do. I want to become an entrepreneur. Hard to do. Resistance is powerful and palpable. And you have to start to view yourself like a warrior who is in a war trying to destroy this mortal foe that shows up every single day. It shows up. Every single day I wake up and I'm paranoid, waiting for this all to crash and burn. But I do the one thing that is the antidote to the resistance. The only thing that can kill or quiet the resistance is doing the work. You have to do the work. All of my messages boil down to the same thing. You have to do the work. Got to get up every day and write every day. Even if you think you're shitty at it, you gotta start the business. You gotta pick up the phone, trembling fingers, and make that sales call where you don't even sound confident. You're like, oh, will you please buy my... You have to do it. It is the only way. And you will gain confidence. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't feel self-doubt on the level that I used to. I'm pretty confident now. But the resistance is still there. Like, he's still there. I'm trying to level up and try new things, like start a YouTube channel, extend beyond an author. Like I'm going to be traveling, giving talks. I'm going to be working on products and programs and stretching myself and working with groups. Like that shit scares me. Deep down, I've put in 5 years of work and I'm still like, feel like a fraud. Like feel like I don't deserve the success I have. Feel like I don't deserve your attention. That's the resistance talking. And you just have to learn how to do the work. In this book, in terms of like pure motivational prose, like the pure motivation of the writing, it's just like poetic genius level motivation. So get that book, The War of Art. The One Thing by Gary Keller. This was a great book that helped me when I first got started. I actually read this book in a single day. So good. And the book basically just talks about goal setting. And it talks about focusing on one thing at a time. We're a very scatterbrained society that we live in. Everyone's too focused on too many things. And it's your lack of focus that keeps you from being productive. You have to learn how to prioritize. Like, this book ties in with Seneca. In there, he talks a lot about setting boundaries, how to make one thing important in your life, block out time for that, and ignore everything else. And so the idea is reverse engineering the one thing that you really want to get done in your life. What's the one thing that you want to get done in the next year? What's the one thing that you need to do in each subsequent month to get there? What's the one thing that you need to do each subsequent week within those months to get there? What's the one thing you need to do each day to achieve your weekly goal, right? And the phrase he puts in the book is, what is the one thing that you will do such that it will make everything else easier in your life? So it's about learning how to prioritize. Really, productivity is just a matter of prioritization. I'm really not, quote unquote, a very productive person. I'll wake up and pretty much, as far as my administrative stuff, like answering emails, keeping track of my schedule, I'm not very good at it at all. But I set aside 3 to 4 hours every day to work on my one thing, writing. I write every day. I'm getting close to shooting videos every day. I focus on one thing. I built one section of my business, the writing aspect, before I tried other things. I didn't try to write and start a YouTube channel and start a podcast. Even with starting the YouTube channel, a lot of people told me to do a podcast and the YouTube channel at the same time, and I thought about it, but I'm like, nope. Let me master the video aspect. Let me get a bedrock foundation of it. Then I can move on to other things. So instead of being scattered attention everywhere, you want to build a pillar before you move on to the next pillar. You have to be focused on what you want. And I've done videos about how to figure out something that you want to aim at for the next 90 days, 60 days, 6 months. And you know what you want to do. If you're a writer, like, you know you want to be writing, you know you want to be making videos, you know that you want to start a business, you know you want to start a landscaping company, a daycare, a charity foundation, you know what you want to do, but you're scared. So read The War of Art because you're scared. And then read the one thing so you can focus on those goals, so that when you start to knock over goals, you create a domino effect. So he also has an illustration in the book where he talks about the fact that if you take a domino that's like 2 inches tall, and then you subsequently put dominoes that are like 1.5% bigger than the next one, by the 52nd domino, only you go from 1.5 inches, 2 inches. By the 52nd domino at that ratio, it reaches from the ground to the moon. And you could take that little domino, flick it, and the momentum will knock over every single domino leading up to that gigantic domino that reaches the moon from the ground. And so that's the power of momentum. I always talk about momentum. You're not going to be successful in life until you learn how to develop momentum. Momentum is the number one key to productivity, success, or whatever you want to call it. So focus on one thing so that you can achieve that tiny goal, so that you can create that reference in your mind that tells your subconscious that you are successful at achieving a task, and then use the energy from achieving that task and roll it over into the next one. And so things become much easier. Productivity is much easier for me now. I'm pretty much motivated on autopilot now, but that's because I didn't try to build an empire at first. Everything you're looking at me doing now, thousands of followers, thousands, millions of people read my stuff, it started with me writing one blog post. I didn't see anything outside of writing the first blog post when I wrote it. And that's one of the main reasons I'm here today. Poor Charlie's Almanack. This is a big, expensive book. And it basically talks about all of the lessons from Charlie Munger. A lot of you guys know who Warren Buffett is, but Charlie Munger is his business partner. And actually a lot of people, even Warren himself says, Charlie's like the real brains behind the operation. He's the real thinker. And really, this whole book just talks about not being stupid. The whole book is about not being stupid. And that's an idea I learned from Nassim in his books, the idea of inversion. Inversion is figuring out what won't work and just avoid doing that. It's really, really hard to be smart. You have to be able to avoid being stupid. So there's a quote in the book and he's like, tell me where I'm gonna die so I don't go there, tongue in cheek, but it's like, you have to understand simple concepts for success. So one is avoiding doing things that are gonna ruin your life. Getting into a bunch of debt can ruin your life. Being lazy can ruin your life. Making ill-advised choices can ruin your life. And where can you look? There are plenty of examples of what not to do. You can look around. There's plenty of examples of how to not live a good life. So look at those examples. Look at the people who you look at and you're like, oh, I don't want to be like that person. Reverse engineer what they've done and avoid doing that. And so this book is about not being stupid. Their whole philosophy talks about focusing on developing competence in things you're good at and things that you understand. So there's all these hot stocks, crypto, tech companies, clean energy. Warren and Charlie don't invest in those things. And they don't invest in those things not because they're not good investments, it's because they don't understand them. They are willing, see, that's the key insight from this book. That's what makes this a life-changing book, is their willingness to ignore the sexy and shiny and even potentially lucrative if they don't understand it. And this is what is so hard for most people to do. It's what's hard for you to do. Stay in your lane. Keep things simple. Do what you're good at. Play games you could win. So he talks about another example in the book. It's actually an example I'm including in my new book, which is coming out in 2 months, by the way. Get excited for that. He talks about you want to become the best plumber in Bemidji, right? So what does he mean by that, best plumber in Bemidji? What he's talking about is saying that you can live a really good life by, focusing on a game that you can win. Instead of trying to create the next Google, become the top real estate agent in your area. Real estate maybe is a market you can understand. I'm not trying to dominate every single business. I know how to write and communicate and a little bit of marketing. So I just stick in that wheelhouse. I don't do e-commerce. E-commerce, that's sexy, shiny object. E-commerce, Facebook ads, drop shipping. Everyone I look in these writers groups and they're always looking for these advanced tactics. When they don't write, they don't grow their circle of competence. They don't just get really good at what they know. So that's what I've been successful at. That's what I've learned from Charlie. Get really good at what you know. And then he also talks about multidisciplinary knowledge. Now, what do I mean by multidisciplinary knowledge? This is actually something, again, Nassim Taleb talks about in his books, is the idea of domain dependence. So domain dependence just means that there's certain people that they're just experts in one area, but they don't understand how that relates to other areas. So they have a one-track mind. So it's like the guy with the hammer thinks everything is a nail. So what Charlie talks about is building, he calls it a lattice work of mental models. And really what that means is you just want to have like a high school senior, college freshman level knowledge of a lot of different subjects. So I have a college freshman level of knowledge about economics. I have a college level freshman knowledge about English and psychology, pretty above average knowledge of marketing. I have a high school level of knowledge when it comes to social skills and human nature and evolution, and I understand that people are animals and treat them as such when I interact with them. And so you just want to have a base level of knowledge in a lot of different subjects, and you want to be well read. So in the book, he talks about the fact that he's never met a successful person who didn't read a lot. So reading works. All the people who tell you reading works, it's true. Just listen to them. Obey us. Obey us, preachers of books. Like, it just works. And he just talks about the fact that if you are willing to just put in the time and outlearn people, you can become successful, more successful, even people who are more talented than you. So learn your way to the top is another one of his mottos. And he has a quote in the book, and he says, step by step, you get ahead, but not necessarily in fast spurts. But doing the work prepares you for the fast spurts and the fast growth. Slug it out inch by inch, and eventually, if you live long enough, you will be successful. And so that's the idea. See, all of these kind of coalesce into, like, if you listen to all the different books and reviews I just gave you, don't they all kind of coalesce into the theories I've been talking about on this channel? The whole idea of putting in work, getting over doubt, focusing, doing what you can control, understanding that things are not linear so that you can hit that upward growth curve. Like, that's what it's all about. It's all about getting upward growth, asymmetrical opportunities. And most people just don't have the focus or the wherewithal or the understanding of asset building or the appreciation for the shortness of life or the ability to focus and overcome doubt to get these things done. And, you know, a lot of these books are the foundation for how I built my life. So if you want to be anything like me, not that I'm someone to aspire to be like, but like if you want to have success, like these are some books that'll help you. And I'll put these books in the description. I will put other things in the description, but these are the life-changing books that have changed my life. And they helped me create this book, You 2.0. I draw from the knowledge in all of these books in You 2.0. So if you even want a more condensed synopsis, just go and buy my book. Go on Amazon, You 2.0. Buy the book. I'm going to add a link below in the description to my email list. I'm going to start doing this. If you click the link below and join the email list, you can actually get a free copy of my first book. And also, you'll get added to Monday Motivation. And Monday Motivation is a series of emails that I send out every single Monday with exclusive content that'll help you get your week started right. Okay, like the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment. I put this video out because someone commented that they wanted to know about the books that I read. So if there's another video idea that you want me to tackle, put it in the comments and I will add it to the list. Namaste.